This is UMAR AHMED for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. Pleasure to be joined by Danny Jacobs. Danny, you and Julio are both coming off losses to Canelo. I know he fought recently. You had a controversial fight with Golovkin, a close-ish fight with Canelo. Is it fair to say most people thought you won the Golovkin fight and just fell short against Canelo? Is that a fair comment?
From the general sense, I would say that that's pretty much the notion, yeah.
How did you score the Canelo fight watching it back several times?
Personally, myself, I thought worst-case scenario could have been a draw, but I knew that if I didn't win convincingly, that it was out of my control to even demand like a fair shake. I knew that if I didn't knock Canelo out or if I didn't decisively pound him every round, that it was a really good chance that it wouldn't go in my favor. So when I knew I couldn't give my very best, I think at the end I just knew that it wouldn't go in my favor because I didn't overdo, you know? Yeah.
Do want to get a quick reaction to his win against Sergey Kovalev at light heavyweight. What did you make of it?
Great win. Yeah.
You make your debut at 68. Do you think that's going to be a slightly bigger challenge than the actual opponent in front of you? You know Julio was a top fighter. We're not sure he's the same fighter anymore. Do you think making the debut at 68 is actually the bigger challenge for you?
I think, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the super middleweight division itself is probably going to be more of a challenge than actually facing Chavez. But I'm a big boy, and I spar big guys inside the ring. I'm able to, hold my ground and, take really good shots from those guys. So I don't think it's going to be a big adjustment, but I do see that it's probably going to be something that I'm going to have to be aware of.
Do you see yourself at 68 for the rest of your career? Are you going to move back down to 60?
Well, I might move up. I might move down. I might, stay put. I'm not sure because there's so many different fights. I mean, I want them all. I want all the big fights from 160 to 168, even though I'm campaigning at 168.
We know Billy Joe Saunders' action tomorrow. Again, he's a guy who can fight at 60, 68. Is that a fight that you and Eddie have talked about? Would you like to face Billy Joe Saunders?
Well, we haven't talked about it. It's been talks maybe like a year ago and prior to that as far as, and not with Eddie, this is just in general. I've always wanted to fight him, but I'm looking forward to seeing him in his U.S. Debut. I wish him the best, and we'll see what's next for the future, but he's definitely a possible opponent.
Someone who's been involved in mega clashes, i.e. Gennady Golovkin and Canelo, are you chasing them rematches again, if possible?
Well, it's not in my mind frame because obviously, those big fights, you have to put yourself in a position to get the rematch, right? And then already going in there as the underdog, chances of getting a rematch, it's not the easiest, so you have to earn it. And that's what this represents. This representing me stepping up against another worthy opponent because to me, I like to face the best of them. To me, I like to face the best of the best who the fans consider to be the best. So Chavez is maybe not the best, but he's not far from what some of the boxing fans consider to be a top dog. So,
last time I saw Keith was actually at Madison Square Garden where Golovkin faced Darren Janko. A highly controversial fight, again, in the middleweight division. How did you see it?
I didn't watch the whole fight, but from what I did see, I thought it was a competitive fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for both those fighters because they both are options.
Yeah. Just before we involve Eddie, I do want to ask you about Julio. He refused to give a VADA sample and was suspended by the Nevada Commission, but you're fully happy that everything's fine with the testing, etc., going into this fight?
Well, listen, I can't really talk too much about anything that I can't control outside of the boxing ring. My job,
answer that for
yes,
you,
sir, please.
Is that both fighters are fully signed up to testing, which when he was requested to do a test, they hadn't done. Danny or Chavez, because they hadn't been asked to do so. So when the fight was made, they both signed up immediately for testing. Danny's record is exemplary, Julio's is not, and that's why he will get a lot of criticism. But the fight is made, it's approved by the commission, everybody signed up to testing, and on we go.
I spoke to Julio about it. He said there was some bad information on your part.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. Cheers, Julio. No, at the end of the day, he was requested to take a test for a fight that he hadn't signed for, basically. He probably should have done it. Danny also had a test, and he probably should have done it. He didn't. So I think the bad information was generally that we requested the date with Nevada, but he hadn't actually signed the papers. So, listen, at the end of the day, the fight's on. We're in Phoenix. It's going to be a huge crowd on December 20, and a big fight for both guys. Like Danny said, you know, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders. There's world championships there for him immediately after this fight, and I think he's going to really enjoy 168 pounds, because sometimes you don't see behind the scenes, you know, how difficult it was for him in the Canelo fight. And I believe that if that fight was at 168 with Canelo, I think you would have seen a different result. And some fighters stay at a weight division for so long because they almost see it as a potential advantage. But I believe at 68, when he weighs in the first time for this fight, he's going to feel like $1 million and think, why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah, I believe so.
I was just speaking to Danny about this. He's been right at the top of the sport, facing the likes of Canelo and Golovkin. Of course, the names Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders would be interesting fights, but I'm sure he wants them rematches against Canelo and Golovkin. Are they realistic?
Yeah, he does, but also he wants to win a world title, he wants to create history, he wants to be a two-division world champion. So that doesn't happen through Canelo Alvarez yet. He would love to rematch both guys. Look at the fights he has available to him. You know, all of those guys on the zone he can just step into, and that's sometimes the concern of a fighter when you talk about both sides of the street, which is boring in boxing, but that is true. But on his side of the street, he's got all these fights that he can fly into. He's just got to win on December 20, and it sets up a massive 2020.
You started your Matchroom USA journey with this man, and we know his story, incredible story. How proud are you of Danny, of what he's achieved?
He took the punt with us. You know, I remember when I signed him, I couldn't believe it. You know, I remember announcing it. We was at Luke Campbell against Jorge Linares on HBO. I was like backstage, and Danny was on TV and he was saying, you know, we've signed with Matchroom. I was like, my chest was pumped up, you know. So, and of course, then when HBO left boxing, we went to DAZN, and then he also came there. And Keith Connolly has done an amazing deal. You know, obviously, hey Keith over there, you know, thanks for that. $50 you just put in my pocket. But he has done an amazing job. He got him the biggest fight in boxing, obviously for a lot of money, but also he made sure there was a plan, win or lose. And now he lost that fight in a close fight, but comes straight back into a high-profile fight, and then straight back into mega fights in 2020. So it's very important that there's always a plan, and it's important that the team behind the fighter have that plan, and they can just train and knowing that everything else is taken care of.
Well, Danny, anything you want to add ahead of your clash against Julio Chavez Jr. and a message to your fans?
I'm just excited just to fully be at my full potential, or have the opportunity to be at my full potential. I don't think people understand truly just how weight plays a factor in a fight. But now that I have a clean slate and looking forward to coming back against a worthy opponent, I'm going to make my fans happy, and I look forward to this fight coming up December 20th.
Well, listen, Miracle Man, best of luck ahead of your debut at 68. Eddie, thanks for your time as well.